What is up, y'all? Thanks for clicking on the video. Today I'm going to be looking at the Warm Audio 273 EQ versus the Heritage Audio. Now, full transparency, I had already recorded a intro for this video before I did the test, and I was talking about how I thought that I would maybe prefer one of these to the other, but that they would probably be about the same, and maybe they would just be different. The one wouldn't be better than the other. But after doing the test, I was shocked at how wrong I was. To my ear, there is one that is way better than the other, and stick around to find out which one that is. So these two pieces of gear are clones of the same vintage gear. The Neve 73 is probably one of the most cloned preamps that I can think of. The Heritage and the Warm are probably the two most well-known, I would say, like mid-priced ones. Now, before we get into the test, I do want to point out one main difference between the two pieces of gear. The Warm has a selectable high frequency, 10, 12, and 16. The Heritage just has one, it's 12K. So obviously when I'm doing the test and I put the EQ on, I'm gonna put the Warm at 12. This isn't an exact science, unfortunately. So the way I'm gonna do it is I'm gonna record just kick and snare. The first pass through, I'm gonna try to level match them the best I can, input and output. And I'm gonna leave the EQ off, so just the preamps will be what you're hearing. And then second pass through, I'm going to pick one, whichever one I decide to do first, and EQ that to my taste, how I would if I was recording, and then match those EQ settings once again the best I can. So anyway, let's get into it. Before I tell you which one was which, go to the comments, tell me which one you liked more, and then also tell me which one you thought was which. So pause the video, go do that. Okay, so the first one was the WA, the Warm Audio. The second one was the Heritage, the HA. One quick thing I do want to point out, on the Heritage, I did have to gain that back on the preamp as well as in Logic. It's about 2 to 3 dBs. This makes sense. The Heritage has a pad on it that I was not engaging because the Warm Audio doesn't have one. But what you just heard is pretty much exactly the same volume between the Warm and the Heritage. So like I said at the top of the video, I was shocked by how different they sounded, and in my opinion, how much better the Heritage sounded. That was definitely the winner for me by a mile. The two main places I heard the differences were, one, the upper mids, and then two, the lows. Even though I had high pass filter on at 50 for the kick drum on the Warm, it was almost like it just wasn't rolling anything off. It was just a lot of like muddy, warbly low end that you don't want. Whereas the Heritage, putting the 60 in there, the 60 hertz, which I really didn't even put that much, it took it really well. It kind of gave you all that 60 hertz like boom that you want in a kick drum, but none of that nasty stuff below there. And also listening to the kick drum, the upper mid information that the Heritage added seemed to be more in that 5K range, which I love on a kick drum. It's not that clickiness that you find around 8 to 10, but kind of that like slap on the beater, which I think sounds great. Whereas the Warm seemed to add more like a sparkly high-end type thing, which I'm not looking for on a kick drum. So when I was listening back to these in Logic, I pulled up a frequency analyzer just to see if I could find any differences. And this is when there was no EQ applied. And from what I could tell, it looked like the Warm was accentuating maybe around like 7K, whereas the Heritage was 5K. I think that explains what I was hearing, at least in the kick drum, the slap versus the clicky sound. I think that also explains the differences I was hearing in the snare as well. When I EQ'd in the Warm, there seemed to be a lot of that high-end, kind of sparkly, snare wiry, ringy type overtones, which if that's what you want, and sometimes that's what you want in a snare, that's fine. Most of the time I'm looking for more of that kind of just attack of the stick. and then like the body of the drum, kind of more mid-range information. And I think the Heritage did a great job of delivering that. So let's listen back real quick to see if you can hear what I'm talking about. So this is the warm with EQ. So yeah, I'm hearing a lot of that like low information in the kick drum. It's almost sounding a little out of control, and a lot of sparkle on the snare, which is I don't really hate, but here's the Heritage. So the kick drum is way more controlled. It's a way tighter sound. And honestly, the same with the snare, just kind of on the opposite end. You know, the snare, instead of getting too much high-end information taking over, it's really kind of controlling that. So these are just my thoughts. You know, let me know below what you think. I could definitely see applications where the warm might be more beneficial than the Heritage, but for drums, for kick and snare, I don't really see me ever using anything other than the Heritage now. I'm blown away by it. I don't want this to be like a bashing warm audio thing. I have so much warm audio gear. They're 412 that I love. I've had the WA12s, which was like, I think one of their first preamps. I've had that for like 8 years. I have a ton of their mics, the 47 Junior, 87, the 14. I love warm. I think this probably says more about Heritage audio than it does about warm audio. There is more to explore on these pieces of gear for sure. Like I said before, the Heritage has a pad that I didn't engage, and I think engaging that pad, I could probably drive the preamp a little bit harder, and it might even sound even better. And the warm has that tone button, which they have on I think all of their preamps. I normally don't use that. The distortion / saturation that it adds is normally not what I'm looking for on the way in when I'm recording, but it is there nonetheless. So to sum it up, the Heritage audio blew me away. I cannot believe how good it sounds. Even with no EQ, it sounds amazing. This is definitely going to be what my kick and snare is going through every time for sure. But once again, the warm audio is not bad. It does not sound bad. It sounds good. But for what my application is, the Heritage is the winner by a mile. Thank you guys for watching this video. This is definitely a little different for me. I don't think I've ever done anything like this before. If you want to see more videos like this, definitely let me know. We can compare drum shell material, drum heads, drum sticks, cymbals, other mic preamps, microphones, whatever. And we can definitely make that happen. But if you're still watching, you're a real one. I appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next video. See you guys.